Over 50,000 dead. That's the toll of the Israel-Palestine war as of the end of March 2025. It's tearing apart the Middle East. Welcome to InFocus on Q's News with me, Curtis Hinton. 18 months ago, a Hamas assault sparked this inferno. Now millions are displaced, rockets rain down, and peace hangs by a thread. Is this Israel's fight for survival or Palestine's stand against occupation? Tonight, our panel battles it out. Brace yourself, this debate's going to be nuclear. Joining me on this conversation is broadcaster and journalist David Atherton, legendary broadcaster Johnny Gould, and intersectional activist educator Mariam Daniels. Welcome all to the programme.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's a big topic. A big topic. We're going to start with you, Mariam. October 7th, 2023. Hamas assaulted Israel. Can I start by asking you do you condemn the assault?
Do people condemn what Israel is doing currently right now? I think a question that does get asked a lot is, do you condemn Hamas? But Hamas is also a prescribed terrorist organisation in only England, America, Canada, New Zealand, Japan, and Australia. At the same time, 7th of October says a lot, but we need to also recognise this started way before 7th of October. In fact, Palestine has been under occupation since, I believe, 1967. 1948 was known as the Great Nakba. So people will ask you to condemn Hamas, but who's actually condemning what Israel is currently doing right now, where over 12,000 children have been murdered, over healthcare workers have been murdered?
Do you, to the point of someone saying that this is in retaliation to what's happened, they've still got hostages, what's your response to that?
Before October 7th, Israel was already bombing Palestine on such a large scale. Before October 7th, Israel had control and still has control of things that are going into Gaza. Before October 7th, journalists were already killed in Palestine. And it's not just Gaza, it's also West Bank as well. And even if we look at the ceasefire agreements, looking at the exchange of hostages with prisoners, there's a reason why the Palestinian prisoner number is so high, because we aren't also calling them hostages as well. Their first teenager, the first child, literally just died in the Israeli prison, and no one is talking about that. At what point are we going to talk about children dying within prisons? And it's meant to be the big diplomatic place within the Middle East. But look at the atrocities that are being caused, that have been called out by many different organisations. Over 135 different members of the UN called for a humanitarian ceasefire. And Israel did not carry on the agreements of the ceasefire and bombed people during the holy month of Ramadan and during Eid, which is meant to be a big celebration for Muslims.
And just before I move on to these two, to open up the conversation, why do you believe Israel are doing this?
I think Israel have made it pretty clear that they want Palestinian land, and also with the help of the President of America right now, Donald Trump, they've made clear that they want Palestinian land. I think we need to also remember that Hamas isn't necessarily Palestine, It may be the group that's running it, but Hamas aren't the healthcare workers in hospitals. Hamas aren't the children that are going to schools that are scared. They aren't the children that have lost their parents, And it's both sides of Gaza and also the West Bank. Settlers have been moving in and literally taking and stealing Palestinian land where they have lived for years, which is why they always have their keys, and they have the Great Return, where they want to return home. They have their keys for home. There are generations of people, even here in London, who their descendants are back in Palestine. Their grandparents were living in Palestine, and they got kicked off their land in such a horrific way.
So before I move on to Johnny, you would condemn, though, the actions of Hamas on October 7th?
I'm not saying whether I condemn Hamas or don't condemn Hamas. What I am going to say is,
but on that specific date, what happened in Israel, where 1,195 Israeli and foreign nationals were killed, do you condemn that?
I think we need to look before 7th of October, before asking whether...
But that action, though?
I think we need to look before 7th of October and also look at the atrocities that Israel have commenced before 7th of October. Do you condemn what happened in 2004 when Palestine was being bombarded? Do you condemn children that have lived decades through so many wars and grown up with this around them? Do you condemn the fact that people have literally grown up in occupation? The fact that colonisation is still going on and we're not calling that is what it is. And the thought that decolonisation isn't going to be something that's peaceful is also a really weird thing. So I refuse to answer that until I hear different states actually call out what Israel is doing. We're saying 40,000 have been killed, but the true fact is the numbers are way higher than that. And the majority of people that have been killed during this genocide, I won't call it a war, I'll call it a genocide, have been women and children.
Johnny, I'm going to come over to you.
Before we do this, can I just very briefly say hostilities have resumed
Between the two
sides.
Yeah.
So far, 1,100 Palestinians have been killed and 68 IDF troops.
Johnny, we know this started before October 7th, we know that, but this specific part of the war, the ongoing conflict between the two parts of land, it's intensified.
Yeah, I can't begin to address all the erroneous narratives of what's just been said, because I think it's important to let you speak, but I'm going to make this very clear, which is that Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza in 2005. In 2007, Hamas were elected by the Gazan people. What happened on October the 7th, 2023, was a choice by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the majority of Gazans to choose war. There's only one thing that I agree with in what you've just said, which is that the number is 50,000 dead in Gaza, and that is made up of around 20 to 25,000 Hamas fighters. So the ratio of those killed is 1 on 1. And the terrible tragedy is that if Gaza wanted to put down their weapons, they would be quiet. I wouldn't say there will be peace between neighbors, because I don't believe Hamas and Gaza want peace. We also have a key which doesn't work to our family's refugee ship in Vienna, Austria. I'm not going back there. I was born in Britain. My mum was born in Britain. I'm very, very proud to be British. I'm not going to hold on to Austria. And being a refugee is not hereditary. And now suddenly, because of what Donald Trump has talked about with the Gaza Riviera, the people want to say, no, we're Gaza and we want to stay here. You either want to stay there or you want to move into Israel. Where do you want to go? The fact of the matter is that Gaza is not under Israeli occupation. It's a temporary measure. They're trying to split the country in order to get the hostages back. Despite everything, and despite most military analysts who would use their head, they would choose the 9 million population of Israel as their security measure against those 25 known to be living. But Israel has this special relationship with its citizens and others who are there to bring them back, to bring them home, to get them back to their host countries if they're not Israelis, and to put their foot on the neck of Hamas to begin that negotiation. There was a military assault on Jenin in the run-up to October the 7th, amid a really terrible situation amongst Israelis surrounding judicial reform. So security was extremely breached. It was bad because the country was not together. I went into Gaza in August of 2023. Wow. And I crossed into it because at that time, these were the final weeks of a relationship which actually turned out to be a lie, the relationship between Israel and Hamas. There was a lack of creative thinking between the parties in Israel. They thought they could bid Hamas into peace. Hamas fooled them into thinking that it's not us, it's Palestinian Islamic Jihad. That's where the rockets are coming from. So it's a terrible tragedy. Israel didn't choose this war, and the sooner that we can find a relationship, which I think where the Arab world can take care of Gazans, the better. They're not our problem. They shouldn't be our problem.
Mariam, I will give you a moment to come back on that, but Dave, we're going to bring you into the conversation. You would condemn what Hamas done on October 7th?
Well, indeed, I just scribbled down on my notes here. There was no whataboutery. There was no deflection what happened on the 7th of October. It was pure and utter murder and should be entirely condemned by everybody. And my attitude towards Hamas is Israel could completely ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip, but chooses not to. whilst Hamas, if they did have the resources, would ethnically cleanse Israel. Now, I find it disgusting that on the 7th of October, there were at least 7 United Nations employees who took part in the atrocities. It really is beggars belief. And also a lot of the teachers that indoctrinate the Palestinian children into hatred of Jews, they are paid by taxpayers like all of us here to teach their children to hate. And when you look at, if you look what's happening in Britain on Saturday afternoons, and that horrible cliche from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm sorry, there is something wrong that, you know, that we live in a world where somebody covertly is calling for the genocide of another race. I'm sorry, I really have had...
October 7th happened on a Jewish Sabbath and on a Jewish holiday.
Yeah, indeed,
the giving of the Torah, the end of the reading of the previous year's Torah and the beginning of reading it. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So that was the context by which it was started, and it was approximately the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. There you go.
I want to ask you both, just Johnny and Dave now, do you believe that this is Hamas versus Israel, or do you think this is Palestine versus Israel?
This is the Islamist world against Israel using Palestine as its hook.
Okay.
So anyone who is for the Palestinians is for a kind of pan-Arab colonialism of the region and then ultimately the world. Israel and the Jewish state is an annoyance to pan-Arab colonialists, to Islamists, so they use Palestinian cause as a human shield.
Do you think that there's often a misconception in terms of wanting human life to be saved, and in this scenario, people in Palestine are dying more than they are in Israel at the moment, than actually supporting Palestine or supporting Israel? Do you think there's in the media at the moment, in life at the moment? I mean, I don't like watching the videos that you see, the pictures that come out. It's horrific on either side, from October 7th and what's happening in Gaza at the moment in Palestine. But do you think that there's often a misconception that people feel they have to support Palestine because they want this war to stop?
Yeah, the media is being manipulated to show very terrible pictures of human suffering amongst civilians. You don't see many dead soldiers. You don't see them going into the tunnels. You do get that on Signal, you do get that on WhatsApp, and you probably get it on some X feeds as well. But what you don't get is the manipulation of the media, and they're very good at it. They're very good at it by Hamas and Al Jazeera and all their other accompaniments.
And the BBC.
And the BBC and UNRWA and all the other people who are bought.
We will get on to the BBC shortly. Mariam, I'm going to give you an opportunity. A lot's been said since we last spoke to you, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to come back on some stuff that's been said.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope you also like the fact that while you guys are talking, I'm also not saying anything, and that you also have your say, which is the reason that we are here. I think one thing I do also want to address is what you mentioned about the Saturday protests that are organised by PSC. And I know you're saying the word Jewish state a lot. The truth is Islamophobia and anti-Semitism literally go hand in hand. The same people that hate me as a Muslim also hate my Jewish siblings. And the reason I say that is because I've literally stood next to my Jewish siblings while they have stood there fighting for Palestinian freedom, and I've watched them be doxxed by Israelis. And I think it's really important to say I have Jewish siblings. I literally have people that I respect highly. I have no problem with anyone that is Jewish. The people that I do have a problem with is Benjamin Netanyahu, the state of Israel, and the Israeli Defense Force. And I think we're talking about the IDF, right? But it's not really talked about how many members of the IDF have literally had such mental scarring from what they've actually seen and what they've done within Gaza and the images that have been seen. Literally during the Palestinian demos that happened, there is literally a Jewish bloc made up of different Jewish organizations. I'm not just talking about one like the mod, I'm talking about various ones. In America, we literally saw that it was Jewish people that shut down in front of the White House. But also mentioning Arab leaders, I'm going to say this openly as a Muslim, I don't trust the Muslim leaders to do the best for the Palestinian people because they don't speak for the whole Muslim community. And I'm sorry that I seem scary as a Muslim that is defending Palestine, but I also stand and defend the people in Sudan. I also stand and defend the people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We're talking about media and BBC, but as soon as the BBC said that there were 40 beheaded babies, the whole world stood up in their arms, as they should, because 40 beheaded babies, the thought of that is horrific, even though it wasn't true. But we have seen images of 6-year-old Hind Rajab, who had 355 bullets in her body after the Palestinian Red Crescent were told that they could go and help save her. A 6-year-old girl. We've seen images of young girls who have been literally blown to pieces. We're seeing images of babies that are dying. We've seen the video of the guy who went to go get the birth certificate for his twin babies who died and has come home and they're dead. And also, I just want to get on the record, you also said that 25,000 people that died in Gaza were part of Hamas. Can I just get that correct?
Yes, that's right, from the Henry Jackson Society.
Okay, because the
From
statistic
validated figures,
that
it's
has actually
about
been that
one-on-one.
69% of people that have died within this genocide has been...
not a genocide.
I choose to call it a genocide. You can
Okay.
call it a war.
It is a
my,
war.
If you mind, it's my actual time to talk right now. I'm sure Curtis will be coming back to you.
It's a war.
Well, I'm going to call it a genocide, but I'm sure Curtis will be coming back
Okay,
to
Mary.
you. But 69% of people that have died have been children. And we're talking about journalists. As soon as the BBC said that Hamas were in the hospital, all of a sudden, it was perfectly fine to go and bomb a hospital. No one thought Israel was going to bomb a hospital. Once they were allowed to bomb one hospital, every single hospital in Gaza has now been bombed multiple times. We've seen the Dr. Hassam literally being taken away by the IDF and is still held hostage. Children are getting operations, and the largest amount of children killed over the last 2 decades has been by the Israeli state. And I need to make that really clear.
That's a blood libel. I mean, that is a blood libel. I'm being respectful.
Am I not allowed to finish speaking?
You've
or-
spoken a lot,
Let's-
but when you start
Okay, go
talking
ahead.
about
Go ahead.
the Israeli state killing more children than
That's
any
not
other
something
country...
I've made up. Can I just say, that is not a statistic that I have made up.
That is
Okay.
an anti-Jewish blood libel.
First of all, I am not
Okay.
anti-Jewish. I'm not
Okay.
talking about the Israeli state
You've
being Jewish. I'm
distinguished
talking
between
about the IDF.
right Jews and the
No,
good Jews and the bad Jews earlier on.
Absolutely not. Can we...
So
I'm
I just want to stop
okay.
you there. You've come up with your facts, and that's okay. But when you start talking about the Israeli state killing more children than any other state over the last X years, I think you said, I can't remember the number, but a few decades, that I have to stop you there.
The
That
UN is the one that
is
actually
a
said-
blood-
Can I
well, the
also-
UN is a corrupted organisation, and I'm
that
afraid
still
they don't...
has Israel in it.
Well, it does. Israel has chosen not
Even
to
though
withdraw.
135
It's probably best, like I do.
members, even
I'm
though
going to stay as
135
well.
members
I'm
have called
g-
for a humanitarian
Yeah, but there's a
ceasefire.
lot more. There's a lot more states who are anti-Israel than Israel itself, and there is the US in there as well. I think it's important, though it would be tempting to withdraw from the United Nations and break it up like the League of Nations. I think Israel is. It's important that Israel stays in that cradle of anti-Semitism, which is what it's become.
Dave, I want to give you the opportunity here at the moment. So we've mentioned the US quite a bit.
Yeah.
3.8 billion in annual military aid to Israel is what the US gives. They've given an additional 14.3 billion since October 7th. Amnesty International accuses Israel of war crimes, citing unlawful killings and collective punishment. That's what they've accused them of. Why do you think the US continues to fund Israel when Amnesty International and that sort of stuff, those sort of organisations are making these
I
claims?
think it falls into two areas. I think the US do it out of decency.
Okay.
And let's face it, Israel's the only functioning democracy, in the Middle East, effectively. I think the only other two Islamic democracies are theoretically Turkey and Indonesia. Israel has the only gay pride event in the Middle East. It is by and large a Western liberal-oriented country. I think also as well, the other reason is that obviously Israel is the birthplace of Christ, and where he was crucified, if you believe that. It's
It's the resting place of St George as well.
yeah.
In Lod.
Yeah.
He wasn't British. Yeah.
No,
He was
that's
Greek.
right. Was he Turkish or Greek?
Well, it's modern day Turkey, but
Depends on the border, doesn't it?
yeah, no. He was born.
But anyway, he's buried in Lod, which is the oldest city in Israel.
Oh, okay. Well,
by
indeed.
the airport.
Yeah,
When was he buried?
something like 693, I think.
So it wouldn't have been Israel then.
Well, it depends who'd kicked us out in that era. So yeah.
You didn't
Okay,
say
Mariam,
kick us out.
Mariam, I want to come over to you just to the
So,
same question.
just make two very quick.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Very
Yeah,
brief points. Just coming back to you on Hamas's hospitals. I mean, the
Sorry,
reason.
did you just say Hamas's hospitals?
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well,
Freudian,
might as
Freudian,
well.
but we'll stick with it.
Might as well.
Stick with it.
You know, it's might, you know.
Okay.
That is where Hamas store their arms. So I'm sorry. You shoot.
Oh my God. Okay, sorry.
That's where they have their munitions. And very, very quickly, what I wanted to say was, just to finish off, Pew Centre, which is thought to be the gold standard of research, asked lots of Middle Eastern and North African countries their attitudes to Jews. Was it favourable or unfavourable? And what they found was between 95 and 99% of all Muslims thought looked upon Jews unfavourably. Now that really is very deep anti-Semitism from the Muslim world. And by the way, a question I've always wanted to ask somebody: where is the line between Islamophobia and criticism of an ideology, secular and religious? Where is the line?
Sorry, can you just break that down a bit more for me?
That's a good question.
Yeah, but
Okay,
I want you
fine.
to break it
Right.
down.
No,
So you're
no.
asking what's the line between Islamophobia and
Legitimate criticism
legitimate criticism of
of a
Islam?
secular and religious ideology.
So are we talking about Islam, Christianity? Are
No,
we talking
Islam.
about Judaism?
No.
So why in particular are we talking about? Is there something really? I don't. So this is the funny thing.
Because
I've
I've asked
don't
this
mind-
question dozens of
if you don't
times
mind,
to
so
the left.
I was born in Luton.
Yeah.
I was born in the same hometown as Tommy Robinson.
Yeah.
And I had
And Monty Panesar. And Andrew Tate.
And Miles Smith, who is a fabulous artist who was winning Brit Awards,
else is
who
from
I'm
Luton?
really glad to know. Miles Smith is an absolutely amazing
He's
artist.
brilliant. I like his
He's
music. I do like
brilliant.
completely
And
off topic,
He's
but yeah.
probably one of the best things to come out of Luton, absolutely. But talking on that note, I grew up watching people want to march against my identity. I wasn't even wearing hijab at that time. My mother had to take off her hijab because after 9/11, she was openly being called a bomber when I was 3 years old and she went to go get me from nursery. And luckily for her, that the Quran does state, like Islam does state, that if you're in harm's way, you can take off your hijab, which is something I hope I never have to do. But it's so funny. I said to one of my friends actually, who's Jewish, I said, it's funny, you're sort of doing what Muslims do sometimes, whereas when a terrorist attack happens, we're always apologising. I said, babe, you're literally in the same boat right now because that is exactly what she's doing. And she's still not being listened to as a Jewish person. And so I'm not saying that every Jewish person is the same. Can I also state, I'm not saying that every Jewish person is the same. Not every Muslim is the same. Not every Christian is the same. Not every atheist is the same. But I think we do get into a really dangerous ground when we start saying every Jewish person supports Israel. Every Jewish person doesn't support Israel. I'm also saying I think it's really dangerous to say that every Muslim person
The
supports
vast
Palestine.
majority of Jewish people support Israel.
Like
It's about
95%.
90 to 95%, depending on which poll you go for.
Okay.
It is a huge majority. It's like 90 to 95%.
And
By all-
does that also include the people in Israel who are literally openly criticising Benjamin Netanyahu,
Well,
who
it's a
also might
democracy
be
and,
fine with the
there
state
is
of
a-
Israel,
there is a
but they
news-
aren't happy with what Benjamin Netanyahu is
Sure,
doing,
and
considering that
he-
he also
and they
has
ha-
been responsible for the deaths of hostages when he has gone and bombed certain areas. And I think that
Well,
needs
that's
to
a
be.
bit of a stretch,
I
but-
mean,
but,
it's not a stretch because it has been.
there was
it
a
has been
tragic
risen down,
friendly
and it
fire
has been
incident, if that's what
a
you're
friend-
referring to.
No fire is friendly.
Well, it was a
No
terrible
fire
incident. That was
is
that's a
friendly.
wicked thing to
No
say about the
fire
deaths of those
is friendly.
hostages.
And every single person
well,
who's
it
died.
was a tragedy actually, and that and
Every
Israelis
single
feel it.
death has been a tragedy, and I think that's what I really need to try and highlight.
But
Every single death.
Netanyahu, of course, it's the first time he'd won an election. It was a sort of over and over again. There was a time when Naftali Bennett was Prime Minister, when Yair Lapid was Prime Minister, and finally, after about, 4 elections in 5 years, Netanyahu won a majority. He was the only candidate to get over 1 million votes in the last election, and then October the 7th
So can I ask the
happened.
question?
There are
Is-
anti-Netanyahu, of course. There's an anti-Netanyahu press there. There's that newspaper, Haaretz, which is quite openly anti-Israel, actually, in many ways. You might look at
Is
it.
every person in Israel responsible for the actions of Benjamin Netanyahu?
No, but
So then
this-
why
but-
is it
but-
seen that every
no, but
person
an elected
then why is
government.
it seen that every person in Gaza, including children who have just been born, are responsible for the actions of Hamas?
Well, they're
also
not, but why
in
haven't
West
they?
Bank,
Why haven't they come out? Why don't they come out? Now they're starting to come out, but we have to understand why they're coming out. Are they coming out against Hamas, or are they coming out because they want peace with Israel? What exactly are they coming out for? There seems to be quite an approval of Hamas. There has been up to this point.
Now things are starting to change.
Well, I wonder, you know, as I say, there are protests going on. They have been brutally put down.
Mariam, Hamas, as you said, is in the UK a terrorist organisation. Al Qaeda is a terrorist organisation. The Taliban is a terrorist organisation. Do you understand why? Sorry, that's the wrong word to use. I do apologise. Not understand. Can you see why people do not want a terrorist organisation on their border, like Israel with Hamas in Palestine? Can you see why people do not trust a terrorist organisation
if
to
we
lead
had a
an area of
terrorist
land?
organisation on the border between England and Wales, would it then be acceptable for all the... I think people literally forget that people in England were evacuated during World War II when there wasn't a terror organisation here. Children in England had to be evacuated. They had a way out because of the horricities that were happening. Luton itself had the bus station bombed up. London was being bombed on a continuous level.
By the Nazis from the sky. By the Nazis from the sky. That's why they were
where the attack was
evacuated.
coming from.
Coventry and Birmingham, amongst many other cities, Liverpool as well, were bombed
Okay,
from
but the
sky.
children
And
in
London.
Gaza are now literally being bombed with components that are made in the very town that I live in. I'm talking about children and women, and also men that have gone and have put so much love into what they're seeing, have had their children die in their arms. Also, if we're looking at journalists,
Give back the
aren't
hostages, then.
journalists...
Give back the hostages.
when they're
Tell
giving
your
back the
friends
isn't
to
it
give back
funny?
the
My friends, you must be besties with Benjamin Netanyahu then.
Bring back the hostages.
Can I do that?
I
Is
don't
that
know.
something that I
Why
can
don't you- why
personally
don't you
do?
use this
Is that
Johnny,
something
Johnny, I
that
want to
I
ask you
can
here,
do?
do you
Why
believe
don't
that
you
will
try?
see an end to
Well,
this
what
conflict?
I would rather.
Why don't you use this
okay, but
platform?
why
No,
are
no,
more
no.
Palestinian prisoners being exchanged for the smaller amount of hostages? Because they are also hostages,
Because we
but they are
value
not
life.
being called the same.
Mary,
They are
Mary,
not.
one
If they
moment.
valued life, then why was the ceasefire agreement not
Okay,
continued
guys.
as
Right,
agreed?
Johnny, do you believe that if Hamas laid arms down, Israel would withdraw?
Absolutely not.
I think they
Absolutely not.
First of all, the first thing's got to be done is to give back all 25 living hostages, and apparently there are 49 in all. There are known to be 24 dead. From what I understand, Israel knows where the hostages are to a large extent. They have intelligence which they've built over 500 or so days. They are dissecting Gaza currently to try and bring back as many of the hostages as they can. Hamas, Gaza, and their families, the tribal families, the sort of crews that there are there, need to bring back the hostages, and that would be an extremely good negotiatory point for
Are you
Hamas,
telling me
maybe,
if that happened, that
to
all the
survive
bombing
and to
would
lay
stop?
down
Are
the
you telling me
weapons.
if that happened, that
Then
West Bank...
they'd
West
have
Bank
to-
hasn't got hostages, though, has it?
We are
The
just
West
going to
Bank
have to
hasn't
go.
got hostages,
No,
has
but
it?
it's-
Mariam,
But
but
yet it's
it's
still
got-
being
we are going
annexed,
to
and
a
the
break.
land is
People
still
who go
being
in and
taken,
they-
They're gonna
and
keep
people
on
are still
going,
being
But they
dying,
kill-
and children
but
are
they
still
kill
being
Jews
shot.
and Israelis
Mariam,
inside Tel Aviv.
Do you know that?
Johnny,
And also, the note that
we are
about
going
that
to a
about that
break,
Israel has
so-
the first gay pride.
Mariam,
It's
we'll
not
come back
even
in a
legal
moment.
to be gay in Israel. You guys
Yes,
know
it is.
that.
Mariam,
Okay. Is gay marriage legal in Israel?
We are going
Is
to-
gay marriage legal in Israel?
Mariam, we are going to a
We have
break.
a gay pride
Johnny, we're
sign.
going to a break.
I love that for you guys. There's also Muslim pride in England.
There is a
but
lot
there's no
to
Muslim pride in
unpack
Gaza,
still
is there?
here on this
But there
special
are
edition
queer
of
people in
InFocus.
Gaza that are more
They're still
scared
going
from
on. Join us
bombs
again after the
than they
short break.
are than the fact.
I doubt that very much.
Oh, you doubt that? Okay, I love that for you. I love the doubt.
I doubt that very much.
By the way,
Are we at a break?
and welcome back to this special edition of InFocus with me, Curtis Hinton, on Q's News. Just a reminder of my guests, we've got Mariam Daniels, Johnny Gould and Dave Atherton. We did go to the break whilst Johnny and Mariam were deep in heated discussion, but Dave, I'm going to start back with you. It's been going on for 18 months. We need to see an end to this war for everyone, for the humanitarian aspect, right?
Sure.
Regardless. What does that look like to you?
Well, in a sense, I find it very encouraging that the Gaza residents are revolting against Hamas. I saw today that there was one guy who was the leader of the protest in northern Gaza, and he was brutally tortured and killed. And it was horrible. What I saw on X was quite dreadful. But the people in Gaza, the real people, have caught up with the people. Apparently, they've all been shot dead. The people who killed him. So, and I really do think that Hamas, the Palestinian people in Gaza, have had enough of war now. They've seen their place. It's now a ruin.
Their home is just.
Really gone. It would probably take decades, if it ever gets rebuilt, to rebuild. And I think probably now the time is peace. It would probably take a generation at least before there's some sort of normality between Israel and the Palestinians.
Johnny alluded to it earlier. The Gaza Strip, the beautiful picture that Donald Trump put up. Obviously, we know it was AI generated. We know it was all in jest. But do you think that the US has any sort of, or do you think it should be down to the Palestinian people to hold a democratic vote, who leads their country, and then that party then decides the future of Palestine?
Well, that's presumably our way, the European way of looking at things. But Hamas, I think in 2005 or 6, when they had the election, they won narrowly. The party that came in second wasn't much better. It's just we're just less extremists than the other extremists.
And a civil war broke out.
Indeed.
The PA. There are still some PA people in Gaza. But let's just say they keep it on the lowdown. But they were brutally kicked out and killed, hundreds. In fact.
I know. Also happened, in Iran as well. So, back in '79. But the point is, if there was peace, there's four countries that have signed the Abraham Accords. They normalised their relations with Israel. Muslim countries, largely Muslim countries. What will happen if there is peace? You have the sort of banking and the commerce in the United Arab Emirates, and you have Israeli innovation. It could become a powerhouse. When they kicked the Israelis out of Gaza in 2005, they were exporting 50 million flowers abroad. Every year, 50 million. They had sort of piping and irrigation and things like that. That kind of innovation. That could be harnessed by the whole of the Middle East. And when people got some more money in their pocket, they feel less inclined to be violent. Basically, if you're dirt poor and you're living below the poverty line, you've got nothing to lose. But if you've got money in your pocket, you want to keep it.
You want to protect it.
Exactly.
Mariam, what does this look like from a Palestinian perspective? We saw on March 23rd the attack on Nissa Hospital, wounding several doctors, medicines being unusable. What does this look like? Because it needs to come to an end from a humanitarian perspective.
What is extremely sad. So looking at a humanitarian perspective, over 100, almost 200 journalists have been murdered, and I use the word murder because they have been murdered.
From both sides, though?
But I'm talking about Gaza side right now. And there's also been 2 Israeli journalists that have been murdered in Gaza. There's been a Nepalese journalist that's also been murdered in Gaza. So since we want to talk about just on the 7th of October, since then, almost 200 journalists have been killed, which is also not allowed under international humanitarian laws. Over 250 organisations have highlighted that what's happening is really, really quite detrimental in terms of humanitarian law. So many healthcare workers, almost 1,000 healthcare workers have been murdered. Just the other day, 22 members of the Palestinian Red Crescent were murdered. They went missing. We didn't know what happened to them. These are people that are meant to be protected when it comes to, as the word you like to use, war. Even though I prefer to call it a genocide because that is what I'm actually seeing.
That's too strong a word.
Well, I mean, the ICC, yes, they did issue arrest warrants for members of Hamas that have been murdered by Israel now, but they also did arrest issue an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. That's not myself. Can you let me? Can I just also say? Sorry, Curtis. If you just let me finish. Can I also say? Can I say there are two of you right now? There are two of you here right now, and there's only me. So if you could please appreciate the fact that I'm the only one talking on this topic. I'm the only one talking on this topic. There's two of you.
Mary, you can continue.
I talk to people in Gaza. I talk to a woman called Wafa who has 3 kids, who's had to move 3 times from tents, and her children have had to go without food multiple occasions, multiple days, especially now that there isn't flour, because aid isn't being allowed into Gaza. I talk to, by Israel, as it has been mentioned also on the news that you guys like to watch. I'm not just talking about Al Jazeera, I'm talking about BBC that refuse to use the word murder and say that young boys that have been killed are men. I'm talking about them who also are very subjective with their words. I talk to people who are on the ground, literally, who are struggling, who have nothing there. Their homes have been destroyed, and they haven't destroyed their own homes. Their homes are being bombed. If we look at how much military assistance Israel is getting, the number is so vast. And to be honest, stupid. If we want peace, why is there not an arms embargo? If we want peace, why is the UK still actively sending arms and letting their bases be used for Israel? That doesn't sound like peace to me. But yet also, you're saying you will arrest Netanyahu if he lands or doesn't land. I think there's just a lot of hypocrisy going on at the moment. I think there's a lot of people aren't openly saying they just want Gazan land, they want Palestinian land, they want West Bank land, because West Bank is also having their land taken. Settlers are coming in, they're being kicked out of their homes.
So, Mary, what I want to ask you, this is the 15th major conflict between Gaza and Israel, 15th. If this ended tomorrow and everyone laid arms, would there be any belief, anyone on the panel, that there's not going to be a 16th within the next 5 years?
Can I ask you, do you really think that's going to happen with what we are seeing now and bombardment happening every single day? People who have lost their limbs, people who are dying, people who can't get treatment. Do you really see that happening? If I had a way to end this tomorrow, I absolutely would. There is nothing.
Do you not believe that if Hamas laid down their weapons today, this moment,
I believe that Israel would still carry on, because West Bank hasn't got Hamas, and look at what's happening there. I absolutely don't believe that Israel would stop, because they have the backing of the United States of America and UK and other European countries. Even though 153 plus countries have called this atrocity, have said this is downright wrong. So many countries have taken them to the ICC. I would love nothing more than to, but I hate hearing this term about the Arab nations. The Muslim leaders do not speak for all the Muslims when there are people doing a lot more than what they are doing, and they are giving oil and they are giving fuel to Israel. When we are watching our Muslim brothers and sisters die, and people are scared to hear that, whether they are Muslims, whether they're Jewish, whether they're Christian, the oldest Christian community in Gaza have almost been killed out. This is a humanitarian crisis. This is a humanitarian crisis where over 40,000 people have been murdered, and 25,000 of those are not Hamas. And I'm actually shocked 50,000 out of the...
The number is
So you're saying that every single person that has been murdered, every single person that has been murdered, are you saying that they are Hamas? I want you to just...
No, he's saying 50,000, 25,000 of them are Hamas.
25,000 are Hamas.
Sorry, so
terrorists.
Mary, one
So
minute.
if
Johnny
there
wanted
was
to ask you a question.
25,000 terrorists in England, as you call them, would it then be okay to go and bomb Great Ormond Street Hospital? Would it then be okay to go bomb schools that children are holed up in with volunteers? Would it then be okay to kill every single journalist that is on the land and target them? Would it then be okay to go and kill every single healthcare worker? Would it then be okay to restrict every single... I said Great Ormond Street. I said Great Ormond Street, not Great Portland Street. First of all, so let's get the hospital names right.
Johnny wanted to ask you a question, so let Johnny ask you the question.
So I just wanted to say, you're using the G word a lot, the genocide word a lot, and Curtis asked you, and you've refused to answer, was
7th of October a genocide?
A genocide. Is that the...
I would say it was an attack, but I wouldn't call it a genocide because it was an ethnic cleansing. It was a direct attack. It was one attack.
Were Israeli Jews.
Yes, I do understand that.
Is that a genocide?
It was an attack.
Was it
but
a
I'm not
genocide?
going to call it a genocide because the numbers of the ethnic cleansing is nothing compared to what we've seen actually happen to Jewish people during the Holocaust, which was an absolute atrocity. Every single death, one death is too many. Can I just say?
No, I agree.
One
I agree.
death
One
is
death
too many. I don't want deaths on any side.
The war
No,
could end
wait. I
tomorrow.
can say, Johnny,
Okay.
can you say the same? I don't want deaths on any
No,
side,
I
no
don't
matter
want
what
deaths either
happens.
side. The war
But you
could end
seem to be fine with the fact that deaths are happening in such a large number
The war,
on the
I'm
Palestine
not.
side.
The war could end
but
tomorrow.
No, but you
It's
sound
very
like
simple.
you are, Johnny.
The war could,
Mario,
How can the
the
war-
war
let
could
Johnny
end
talk, let Johnny
tomorrow by two conditions. Bring
Return
our
all the hostages and return all the Palestinian prisoners and let the aid into Palestine and let the aid into Palestine and let aid into Palestine and give people back their water, give them
Mario,
electricity,
let
let the
Johnny talk.
hospitals be fine.
Let Johnny talk. and
People
then
are
you can come
dying
back.
in unprecedented
Mario,
numbers.
let's
And
let
if you
Johnny
think
talk.
this is just about hostages, you are so wrong.
You're
And
doing
I
my
feel
bidding,
so
really, to be
sorry
honest.
for you.
You're
I feel
doing my
so
bidding.
sorry
It's
for
good.
you.
This is handy because you're doing my bidding.
Right, I do
When
want
there's
to
two
move.
of you
I
and
do
one
want to
of
move on to
me,
Syria
yeah.
very shortly. So, in just 2 more moments on this, Johnny, I've asked David and I've asked Mariam, how does this war end? 15 conflicts between the two sides.
It could be ended immediately with Hamas surrendering all their arms
Yep.
and 49 hostages, I believe 25 are living, 24 are dead, returning home. It wouldn't be peace, but it would be quiet. I think Israel's destiny in the Middle East should be described as quiet rather than peace. And if that we can have quiet, and by the way, Israel does achieve great things even in war. There was a tremendous corporate deal arranged in the last week or so where Wiz was sold to Google for $25 billion. $4 billion of that went to the Israeli exchequer. This is a country of 9 million people. That is an incredible achievement. And Israel can continue to develop. I do believe in a Sunni reformation. I do believe that the Arab states, and Dave mentioned the four countries.
Islam?
Because I'm just talking about my friends in the Emirates and Bahrain. I have many, many Arab friends in the Emirates and Bahrain, not so much in Sudan, or I'm working on that, and even in Saudi. Since the Abraham Accords, the first person I reached out to was the ambassador, the Emirati ambassador to the UK, and we talked as friends, and I'd never done that before, and I've made friends in those areas, and they accept Israel as an indigenous part of the Middle East. And I do believe in a Sunni reformation led by the Emirates, which could create amongst their Sunni brothers and sisters in Gaza to create a new form of Gaza, a new form of Palestine, which could live in quiet to start with, and maybe ultimately peace
Sorry,
in
by
the
Emirates,
future.
do you mean UAE?
Yeah.
The same UAE that
I
fund
mean
the
Abu
RSF
Dhabi, I
and that
mean
have also
Dubai,
given
and I mean
weapons to the
Sharjah, and I
RSF
mean all
and
the
also
kingdoms.
take and steal a lot of gold out of Sudan, that UAE.
I think
that has
I-
been taken to ICC.
I think
Okay.
I
I think
mainly
this
mean
is-
Abu
Would
Dhabi.
I be
but
allowed to
mainly-
answer that question that you just asked, Johnny? I'll keep it
talks
nice
too
and
much, doesn't
short.
she?
Yes, yeah, of course.
I talk a lot. There's one of me, Johnny. There's two of you. It's okay.
Well,
So I think the way that peace would really happen would be, yes, for all the hostages to be returned, but also for Palestinian prisoners to be returned, for aid to be let in, for countries to stop arming Israel, and for countries to actually take a stand to actually see.
But the last time the
I talk a lot.
soldiers, the last time the Palestinian prisoners were released, one of them was the architect of October the 7th. It was Yahya Sinwar. He
Is
was
that the
released.
same Yahya Sinwar that's been murdered?
And Mary,
He was-
but can
he
you
was killed
understand
by the
then?
IDF forces in
Can you
hiding.
understand then why, in that scenario, that maybe not all Palestinian prisoners need to be released, but they
Curtis,
need to
I
be
have a
reviewed one by
question.
one?
I have a really serious question right now. Okay.
Very, very quickly, as we do need to move on to Syria.
Very, very quickly. I don't know Yahya Sinwar, you know. I am literally just a Muslim girl from
course.
Luton who's doing what she can. But I don't even know if I should really say this. If your family was being attacked, how would you feel? How would you react? If you've seen your family be attacked consistently for decades, how would you attack? Now, I'm not sitting here
You
saying...
declare war on them after
Would you
October the
mind if I
7th.
actually get to finish?
That's the answer.
Would you let me finish?
Israeli
Now, the
families
only
were
way
attacked.
that fighting
Johnny?
is going to... The only way that this fighting, as we keep calling it, is going to stop is, yes, for hostages to be returned, also Palestinian prisoners to be returned, but also Israel has too much power. Look at the state of Gaza. Look at how it is literally being pummeled into the ground. Look at how people don't have food. Look how they literally are having no aid coming in. And look at how US and UK are saying nothing but yet aiding and abetting that. Aiding and abetting that. No aid is actually getting into Gaza. And people in Gaza, can't get out unless they have an extortionate amount of money that they're all trying to fundraise individually. That's not happening. So
19
yes, I want
years
your
of
hostages returned.
statecraft
Yes, I
wasted.
want your hostages.
19
Yes,
years
I
of
want your
statecraft
hostages
wasted.
returned. But I also want peace for the people in Gaza.
Build your
I
state.
want peace for the build my state.
Build Gaza.
Build my state.
You've wasted
We-
20 years on building tunnels and
Okay.
sending rockets
I've
into
done
Israel.
that.
Guys,
I've done
Hamas.
that.
Mariam,
Thank
Johnny,
you
we
so
take
much,
responsibility
Johnny.
for Israel.
Thank
We
you so.
take
I want
talk
peace
about
and
this.
freedom for everyone, and right now that is not a thing.
It's not a
Right
thing.
now that is not
Mariam,
a
Johnny,
thing, and
we-
too many people
we are-
have
we
actually
are
been
moving on from
murdered,
this.
and you refuse to use the word murdered. And if you want to call the 7th of October a genocide, that means what is happening in Gaza is also a genocide. You don't get to pick and choose. You do not get to pick and choose.
We could talk about this and we could keep going and going and going. I don't think you're going to see eye to eye, but I'm going to throw over to Dave. Syria. On December 8th, 2024, Assad's 24-year rule ended.
Sure.
The last 4 months have been quite difficult.
Yes, indeed. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss, basically. The king is dead, long live the king. What happens? Al-Jaloni, the ISIS, formerly ISIS and Al Qaeda affiliated de facto president at the moment, and his Hayat Thaqir al-Sham thugs are going on a massive ethnic cleansing exercise against the Alawites,
Yes.
who are a Shia minority, and also the Christians. They've also probably got their eyes on the Kurds and the Druze in the south of the country.
And we do have a guest on the line with us today. Do you want to...
I'll get on. I'll just finish very briefly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Briefly the story. It was through this gentleman who we won't name. I spoke to a Syrian Christian lady, and this is her story. Al-Jaloni apparently sends from his palace to the mosques
Yeah.
orders who he wants investigated and looked into.
Okay.
And it's not only his HTS thugs, it's also Chechens and also other people that they describe as Asian Muslims, probably from one of the former Soviet Union satellite countries. And it's within this one example, they went to this village in the western part of Syria, and they questioned them whether they were part of Assad's army, which they weren't, and then they stripped them of all their money, gold, possessions, mobile phones, and left. And then a second wave came through a day or two afterwards, and they went through the same routine. And were they part of Assad's army? No, they weren't. But then they demanded money. And Sarah, who I spoke to, not a real name, she was on the first floor of her apartment. And outside were her brothers and also some of her neighbours. And when they found they had no money, they were shot, murdered in cold blood there and then. Sarah saw her three brothers murdered in an instant. And the gentleman we've got coming on can probably bring us up to date as to what the current situation is. It's not improving, is my understanding.
So welcome to the programme. We're going to get you on it now. Can you hear us all okay?
You very well. Just confirm if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you all okay. Welcome to the programme. We're not going to name you for obvious reasons, but welcome to the programme.
Thank you so much. Actually, I'm not living in Syria, so you can name me. My name is Har, living in Ukraine. I'm part of something called Association. Been watching events since that fall. Our association, the group of Alawites living inside, organizing our activity, which rights against minorities, including Alawites and Christians in our region. David mentioning the event Ara. Actually, those happened in a coastal city called Gaza. It's not a village city, and Fulani fought. They attacked. They killed Alawites in that city. Yes.
The signal's not great. It's cutting a little bit our side. We're not quite making all the pieces together. I do apologise.
Yeah. Can you hear me well right now?
I can, yeah, that's perfect as it is.
Yeah. Okay. So, Banyas is a coastal city. Took place since 6th of February till 9th of February. It was very intense attack for the coastal area. Tell, tell me if you are hearing me.
It just started to cut out again. I do apologise.
Okay, just let me check my connection for a second. I believe it's a good connection now.
Okay,
So,
let's give it another go. Go on. Sorry, please continue.
the coastal area was attacked, and the attack took place since 6th of February till 9th of. It was very intensive, going village by village, killing people, innocent people, without any reason. For identity. Are you alive? Just it was like industrial scale.
The line is it does keep breaking up. I do apologise. Hazem was trying to explain to us basically what had been going on. They were going from town to town, essentially from the 6th to the 9th, from what I understood. Question whether they're part of Assad's regime, and if they say no, they would. Some were being killed, some were being stripped. It's horrific what we're seeing over there, right, Johnny? It's I mean, you would have remembered when Assad came in 24 years ago. They probably didn't expect it to end like this with such probably hope at the time.
Yeah, it is a terrible tragedy, and Syria is a very, very old culture. It is a very, very old society with a declining but still present Christian religion. The Druze, which are in the south, and are the brothers and sisters of Druze who live in the north of Israel, which is creating a geopolitical possibility of a union between the Druze who live in southern Syria and their Israeli Druze brothers and sisters. For the first time, Israel let in some Syrian Druze to go and see their family, which had been split apart. And there are Alawites who are, of course, the victims of revenge attacks.
Yeah.
Because Assad was, of course, an Alawite. One of the great mysteries to me is, and obviously Alawites were the minority in Syria, and a little bit like the Hashemites in Jordan, where the majority of the population might be regarded as Palestinian. The great mystery is that the same Alawite people govern and run arguably the most peaceful nation in the Middle East, and that is Morocco. So Hassan II and Mohammed VI and his dynasty are also Alawite, and they have produced century upon century of peaceful relations between three main people: the Berbers, the Arabs, and the Jews. The Jews are declining in population in Morocco now after literally hundreds and hundreds of years of settlement. My wife is Moroccan Jewish, and she left the country, but she still has family in Morocco. So I was amazed to find out that when the Alawites are left alone in peace, they can produce peace. It just goes to show how differently the countries are between North Africa and indeed the northern part of the Middle East.
Yeah.
Mariam, before Dave, we'll come back to you in a moment. The
Yeah.
EU has pledged 2.7 billion to aid in aid support for Syria. Do you believe it's going to be spent in the right ways, hearing the stories of what's happening at the moment?
I mean, it's kind of hard at the moment. Syria is still, it went through something absolutely difficult with the Assad regime. And even though we have this new president in place, people and groups are still being targeted. But I think also knowing that there was US involvement in that is difficult. And just wanting freedom for the Syrian people, it's also looking at all these other things that are included. We hope that it will be, but the truth is we don't know, you know. Syria is still forming its way back together. And
Do you think under this regime they could give people hope, a future, or do you think...
I would like to hope so, but not while there is a group, a smaller ethnic group that is being killed,
Yeah.
and that's something that we can't also ignore, you know. The fact that there is groups that are being murdered and the numbers are going up is something that can't be ignored.
Well, civil war in Syria started in 2011.
Yeah.
130,000 Syrians still remain missing.
Yeah.
Quite a substantial number. You can understand why Syrians maybe got fed up with the Assad regime with that many missing.
Yeah.
Where does Syria go from here?
Well, I just think I just think Syria, despite Al Jaloni wanting to make peace with the West and obviously get Western aid down, I think Syria long term in the next 5 years or so will become a base for ISIS to invade and or terrorise
It's a
Israel.
basket case. It's a new bridge, I think, towards Israel.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
And a point of information about his name, Al-Julani, that's Arabic for the Golan.
Is it?
So
the Golan
there-
Heights?
yeah. So there is talk about nominative determination.
I've just been told the guest, we've got Hazim back. He is here. Hello, welcome back.
I'm with you. Thank you. Can you hear me right now?
Yes, it's much clearer. Wonderful.
It's great. So, regarding, I need to make a small correction regarding Alawites.
Okay.
Yeah, the ruling family in Morocco, it's not the same Alawites are in the coastal area. Actually, Syrian Alawites, it's part of modern Turkish Alawites, which is from Mersin we can see till Mount of Muhsin in Lebanon. So we are pure Syrians. We are more a nation than a religion group. Yeah, sometimes they are regrouping Alawites like part of Shia. Actually, we have a lot of conflicts in ideology in Shia. We have long history alongside the Christians in the coastal area. We are not minority in Syria today. We are second biggest population group in Syria. There is rough estimation in 2015. Alawites was around 6 million in that time, so they are much more right now. So this is a point which I wanted to clarify regarding what's happening. That events from 6 to 9, it took intensive place during 3 days. Death toll around 2,500, which is really documented victims with names, with photos, with everything. But today we are hearing very scary numbers. Something around 17,000. If we are speaking about 17,000 victims today, only in 3 days. So this is killing on industrial scale. This is what we can speak about real genocide in here.
I mean, hearing those
It's a
numbers,
real ethnic cleansing that's going on. Sorry?
the numbers, 2.5
Yeah.
thousand to 17,000 in actual reality,
Yeah.
it's...
Staggering, isn't it? Yeah. It's an appalling situation that the Alawites and the Christians and everybody else find themselves in. Again, the point is, the thing that really irritates me, the United States has unequivocally condemned it. Marco Rubio did.
Yeah.
The EU are saying that the HTS and Al Jaloni's troops are just mopping up former Assad armed resistance. Completely untrue. It's civilians they're killing. Yeah.
So what is it? Is it they're covering something up? Is it intelligence is wrong? What's going on?
Oh, this is plain ethnic cleansing.
Which the EU is allowing to happen.
And of course, David Lammy's bunged them 50 million quid and said nothing about the atrocities that are going on. What more do you have to do to point out the unjustness and the nastiness of Syria and Al Jaloni's thugs? It's an absolutely appalling situation that we find ourselves in. All I can really do on this is publicise it and obviously bring people like Hassan on. And what more can I do? I've written to my MP as well. But
Hassan, what do you think is needed to be done? We don't have a lot of time left. What do you think is needed to be done to rectify what's going on?
We need, first of all, we don't have any access to media in that area. There is, it's not allowed at all. There is no international independent media allowed to access Syrian coastal line. There is no international aid. We didn't see any UN organization with serious efforts till the moment in that area. It's really humanitarian crisis there. I know till the moment we have more than 45,000 Syrian Alawites right now fled to Lebanon, and they are registering under UNHCR in order just to be refugees somewhere. They are just living. We are facing right now, we are witnessing a new wave of refugees. Maybe part of them, they are going to reach Europe. So we have really humanitarian crisis, and we see silent from the Western governments. There is attempts from European Union today just to legitimize a Jolani government, which is really, really how to say, it's unfortunate for those innocent victims. We need independent committee to investigate, to observe, to assign who's responsible about the massacre which happened and which is on daily basis happening. We are losing every day today, on average 150 men on the checkpoints. They are just kidnapping. They are just taking now. We have reports right now about taking women as slaves to North Syria.
And I was
All
going to
those
ask you,
facts, yeah.
do you think that this can be achieved, or is it just hope?
It's hope right now. We are trying by all our means to make our voice to reach the reason, to show how the situation in Syria is very fragile right now. Any other wave of massacres, it's going to lead for a refugee wave from Syria to Europe. I'm not speaking about Alawites. Economical situation is unbelievable bad.
Yeah.
So we are speaking about a new wave of refugees now.
Well, the program from next week goes live Monday to Friday, so I want to welcome you
Yeah.
back on at some point on a regular basis to keep us updated with what's going on over there with the information you've
Yeah,
got.
for sure.
Media might not be able to work over there, but if we can do the job here for people so they get the right news, I think that's the best we can do here at InFocus.
Thank you so much.
Hazem, thank you for your time.
All the best, Hassan. Thank you.
Mariam, no UN, no British giving £50 million. Why are people turning a blind eye to what's going on in Syria, or do you think that they're not yet believing what's happening?
I think it is a case of people not believing what's happened because of how brutal the Assad regime was, and that where the celebration came from the Assad regime being...
It was a liberation,
Absolutely.
supposedly.
That's
supposedly.
what it was seen as. But I think because people are still in this liberation moment, it's hard to actually see, like, wait, there's people that are still suffering, there are people that are being targeted. And I think it's really dangerous to also kind of ignore that. And I think, like, aid is definitely needed. We also see a lot more people coming home to Syria, which is beautiful. But we can't also acknowledge that without acknowledging the fact that there are people who are in harm's way. And I think, like Hassan said, like, there's going to be more surge of refugees to Europe, and we know that this country isn't exactly the kindest to refugees as well.
I've got an answer to this as well, which is slightly more cynical, which is that I think the media in this country and adjuncts to the mainstream media are in support of Al-Jawlani. And I'm talking about that podcast involving Campbell and Stewart, where they invited the geezer in a suit. I'll take off my greens and my AK-47, and I'll come up with my tie straight, and I'll come and talk to you. And they have become full-on extremist broadcasters. And that the fact that they are an adjunct to the establishment in this country is deeply worrying. And when you do invite people of Hazem's caliber onto the show, you are really doing something extremely important in the English language to the world. And I congratulate you, Curtis.
Well, if we can give the platform, I mean, I'll give credit to Dave for being able to organise that. But
Dave fixed it.
If we can give that voice to people, like having both sides of the argument today, we're not going to go back into the debate, Johnny and Mariam, but with like the Israel-Palestine debate, people getting together, having that conversation is what it's all about. What's happened with Assad? Is there any update with what's going on with Assad at the moment? Is he just in hibernation in Russia?
I think he's Russia. He won't be welcomed back. He has no broad popular support.
Just to cut in there, Dave, I want to stay with you though. Russia, why are they not getting involved with Syria?
Well, still have their bases there. In fact, some of the Christians and Alawites have actually fled to Russian bases.
Oh, Russia too occupied with Ukraine?
Yeah, indeed, yeah. In fact, what Sarah told me was, after the massacre and before the massacre, a lot of the people were moving out into the valleys and to the hills to get away from Al-Jilani's thugs. So that's what's happening there. I suppose Russia, it's had to go back and with its tail between its legs.
Yeah.
Their man has gone, and I just thought,
It's not the first time it's happened for them.
You've got to mention the Turks here as well, because they are the sponsors of the new Al-Jilani regime as well, and they become a bigger regional power. And the very frightening prospect of Turkey and Israel being involved in direct conflict. For Turkey is a member of NATO, and Israel is not. So should there be a mainline attack by Israel on the Turks for some reason of terrorism, the Article 5, as you mentioned, would mean that the United States, Germany, Britain, France would have to declare war on Israel and defend Turkey. And ain't going to happen. So I think that rather shows us the state of the NATO alliance created after the Second World War.
It's been an incredible debate. Mariam, where can people find you on social media if they are looking for you?
My business one is Mazzy D Empowerment Network, and Instagram is Mariam_Daniel_._.
Wonderful. Mariam, thank you for coming on the programme. Johnny, I mean, you are the legendary broadcaster Johnny Gould, but where can people find you online?
Just find me at Johnny Gould, JONNYGOULD. If you really fancy having a bit of fun, a bit of villa chat as well, I'll do that too.
We won't talk about that today. Dave, you are a regular, but go and tell the audience where they can find you online.
Dave Atherton20 at Dave Atherton20. That's my ex Twitter handle.
And it's not officially confirmed, but you are going to be joining me as one of the new co-hosts from the new programme from next week.
Well, it's a wild allegation, and which I'm told has been confirmed. So yeah,
I'll be watching.
We'll yes. I mean, from next Mondays, we do have our normal programme on Saturday of InFocus, but from next Monday we'll be going live, as I informed you a couple of weeks ago, Monday to Friday at 7 p.m. every evening, going through all the latest news stories, and we'll be throwing in every so often a special just like this to cover the important matters for you at home.
But a bit more balanced, like maybe 2-2 or 1-1.
Maybe. I mean, Matt, you did talk a lot today, Mary. You got your point across.
So did Johnny, but it's okay.
Well, I deliberately kept quiet, so it was really between you two rather than
Still two against one, it's okay.
Well, thank you all. Thank you to our guest Hazem on the line as well, and thank you to at home.